You won't believe the secrets Ann Margret kept for over 5 decades, and why she's finally telling the truth now. For years, she was Hollywood's flame-haired goddess, elegant, magnetic, adored by millions. But behind that dazzling smile was a woman who carried unspoken scars. Because while the world saw a star, Ann Margret was surviving the darkest corners of showbiz. And now, at 84, she's done hiding. She's calling out the men who made her life hell, not with wild rumors, but with memories burned into her bones. Let's start with James Woods. To audiences, he was razor-sharp, intense, magnetic, the kind of guy who owned every role he touched. But on the set of a gritty 1979 thriller called The Hunted Desire, Ann Margret saw the real man behind the act. He wasn't even the villain on screen, but off-camera, something about him was chilling. His stare lingered too long, his silence felt calculated. It wasn't acting. It was watching. Studying. Then the whispers started. Crew members saw him sneaking around late at night. Trailers. Dressing rooms. Makeup areas where he had no business being. People shrugged it off, he's just looking for props. But the truth? It was so much worse. On day 7, a young tech, just a kid, gave her a tape. "You need to see this," he said, trembling. What she watched made her skin crawl. Hidden cameras. Planted where she changed. Where she showered. Private moments, stolen. She wasn't acting. She was undressing. Alone. Unaware. And being recorded. Not once. Not twice. Across multiple rooms. Multiple angles. Woods had rigged the set like a predator laying a trap. And nobody stopped him. When she tried to speak up, lawyers swooped in. The film was canceled over creative differences. The tapes? Vanished. The whispers? Silenced. Woods? He kept working like nothing happened. Because the truth wasn't profitable. It was dangerous. And the system? It chose him. Not her. And James Woods wasn't the only one. Next. Steve McQueen. Hollywood's rebel king. The kind of guy who made sunglasses look like armor and motorcycles sound like poetry. But behind that cool was a man twisted by jealousy and control. In 1970, when he and Ann Margret started seeing each other, it felt electric, until it turned terrifying. At first, it was just possessiveness. He didn't want other actors touching her, even in scripted scenes. Then came the rage. He'd destroy her scripts. Shatter glasses across the floor. Accuse her of things she hadn't done. And then came the night on his yacht, when a fight turned into a beating so brutal she thought she might not survive. Broken ribs. A fractured jaw. Her head slammed into steel. And when it was over, he stood above her, silent. No apology. No remorse. Just breathing. Watching. She left and never looked back. But the scars? They stayed. And Hollywood? Said nothing. Then there was Frank Sinatra. The icon. The legend. The man with a voice that melted hearts and ties so deep even the White House listened when he called. But to Ann Margret, he wasn't just powerful. He was terrifying. They met at a glittering party. She was barely 24. He was 50, magnetic and dangerous. What followed wasn't a relationship. It was control, masked as charm. He gave her access, favors, fame. And when she got pregnant, he didn't scream. He didn't threaten. He slid a paper across the table, an NDA. And instructions for a private abortion. When she begged to keep the child, he just lit a cigarette and said, "If you don't, I'll make Hollywood think you're a Swedish hooker who slept her way in." She signed. She obeyed. She was erased anyway. Rumors spread. Studio doors slammed shut. Tabloids printed lies. And Sinatra? He just kept singing. Laughing with presidents. smiling for cameras. While Ann Margret faded from casting lists. Just like that. But perhaps the most heartbreaking betrayal came from Elvis Presley. The one man she truly loved. Their chemistry on Viva Las Vegas was real, fiery, intense, impossible to fake. But Elvis wasn't just insecure. He was dangerous. He needed her to belong to him. Only him. And when jealousy hit, it hit hard. Screaming matches. Broken phones. A slap that left more than just a sting. Behind-the-scenes footage, now buried, allegedly captured him shoving her into a wall. The official excuse? Laryngitis. The truth? A split lip and a battered heart. He threatened her. Blackmailed her. Spread lies about her family. He couldn't let her go, not without punishment. But one day, she did the impossible. She left. And never went back. Because she knew if she didn't, she might have ended up like Marilyn, lost and alone in a world that worships your image but kills your spirit. And then, there was the nameless man. You won't find him in headlines or movie credits. But Ann Margret never forgot him. He worked in the shadows. No fame. Just power. She met him at 23, thinking it was a casting meeting. Instead, he showed her fake nude photos. Say no to this role, he said, and they go public. Then he locked the door. He didn't touch her. That would have been too obvious. He blackmailed her with silence. And that silence followed her. Roles blurred into shame. Compliments felt poisoned. The shadow of that moment, of that click of a lock, never left her. She found those photos years later, hidden in a casting director's binder. Passed around like currency. A reminder that sometimes, the most dangerous men don't raise a hand. They just pull strings. But the final name on her list? Sam Peckinpah, the so-called genius behind the Wild Bunch. In 1972, Ann Margret joined a Western he was directing. Right away, it felt off. He wanted her to strip for a scene. She refused. So he made her pay. Endless retakes. Grueling hours. Then came the explosion. A stunt gone wrong, except it wasn't an accident. He had ordered real explosives. And when flames licked up her leg and blistered her skin, he stood over her and smirked. "Oops," he said. Like it was a joke. It took her 9 months to recover. Skin grafts. Physical therapy. Pain she never imagined. But the worst part? Hollywood shrugged it off. Mad genius, they said. Just part of his process. But Ann Margret knew the truth. He didn't burn me by mistake, she whispered later. He wanted me to burn. Now, after all these years, she's speaking out. Not because it's easy. But because it's time. Because we need to hear these stories. The ones buried under red carpets and studio deals. The ones that remind us that behind every shining star is a human being, vulnerable, brave, and, too often, betrayed by the very world that claimed to adore them. If this moved you, share it. Talk about it. Don't let these stories stay in the shadows. Because silence is what allowed these men to thrive. But not anymore. And if you want more true stories like this, raw, real, and unfiltered, you know what to do. Like. Subscribe. Hit the bell. We're not done telling the truth. Not by a long shot.